Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 21, The cat turns back into a human. If it were an enemy, that would be easier to deal with. But the reality was that this was an innocent civilian, whose only unique trait was knowing Dazai Osamu. For Nakahara Chuya, whose knowledge of Komai de Nagito was limited to this, it felt extremely embarrassing. Luckily, Komai de Nagito had not yet turned back into a human and remained an elegant and beautiful Siberian forest cat. Nakahara Chuya hesitated for a moment before awkwardly apologizing, feeling that apologizing to a cat was much easier than apologizing to a person. "Sorry, I didn't know you were a human earlier." With a stiff and embarrassed expression, Nakahara Chuya quickly left Dazai Osamu's office. He had come hoping to see Dazai Osamu get embarrassed, but now he was the one feeling humiliated. Why stay any longer? Feeling embarrassed in front of a cat was one thing, but if he had to face a person. Nakahara Chuya shuddered at the thought and refused to imagine further. As he closed the door, he heard Dazai Osamu's voice at a volume he could still catch. "Finally, that nuisance is gone. Now we can get down to business." Nakahara Chuya's hand froze for a moment on the door, but he held himself back from turning around and closed it firmly. If he went back now, Dazai Osamu would surely undo the ability that turned that person into a cat. What could be more embarrassing than realizing you just petted someone for half a day, thinking they were a cat? He would feel even more uncomfortable than he did now. Dazai Osamu definitely did it on purpose. Thinking it was part of Dazai Osamu's scheme, and given his many experiences of being tricked before, Nakahara Chuya quickly made up his mind and hurriedly left. Komai de Nagito, regretfully watching Nakahara Chuya's hurried departure, felt deeply disappointed. Meow meow meow. Ah, why couldn't he wait until I turned back into a human before leaving? I still wanted to talk more with this ability user. Hearing the regret in the cat's meows, Dazai Osamu dropped his smile and said disapprovingly, "Komai de-kun, I know you tend to admire people with special abilities, but let's just forget about that pipsqueak from earlier. Don't make me question your taste." Komaida the cat innocently let out a soft meow. "Fine." Dazai Osamu knocked on the table. "Talking to you like this is tiring. Let's turn you back into a human quickly. Are you still wearing clothes?" Komaida the cat nodded. The last time the person trying to extract information turned him back into a human for a short time, he was still wearing clothes. So undoing the ability now shouldn't be a problem. After getting his answer, Dazai Osamu casually stroked Komaida the cat's soft fur. The silky, fluffy texture made Dazai Osamu pause for a moment, but before he could fully enjoy it, Komaida the cat had already turned back into human form. Sitting on Dazai Osamu's desk, Komaida Nagito looked down at his hands, readjusting to his human body, and said excitedly, "Thank you, Dazai-kun. I can't imagine what I would have done if you hadn't helped me. I really am such a useless person, always getting into trouble while trying to help, almost dragging Ayatsuji-sensei down with me." Sitting on someone else's desk while talking wasn't exactly polite, so as Komaida Nagito spoke, he started to jump off the desk. "You can stay there." Dazai Osamu lazily leaned back in his chair, propping his legs up on the desk. This way, he didn't have to crane his neck and could look directly at Komaida Nagito. The sofa was stained with coffee earlier and is out for cleaning. "It hasn't come back yet." Komaida Nagito smiled helplessly and said, "So, when we were talking on the phone, you did fall off the sofa, didn't you?" Thanks to his enhanced hearing after turning into a cat, he swore he had heard everything and could perfectly imagine the scene. Dazai Osamu shrugged. At that time, he had been lying on the sofa, preparing to broadcast some music. There was a coffee cup resting on top of a folder next to him on the coffee table. Without thinking much, he had casually placed it there. But when he laughed so hard that he rolled off the sofa, he accidentally knocked over the folder. Due to the lever effect, the coffee cup flew into the air and ended up spilling all over the sofa. It was the kind of strange, unpredictable situation that occasionally happened, so Dazai Osamu didn't dwell on it. Instead, he shifted the conversation to something he found more interesting. So, how was your vacation? It seems like it was pretty eventful. Why don't you tell me about it? Even though Komaeda Nagito had mentioned his vacation before, he hadn't explained the specifics. And because of the odd conversation he overheard between the two adults on the phone, Dazai Osamu's curiosity was piqued. Komaeda Nagito didn't hold anything back. He talked about winning the lottery, then moved on to how his neighbor was a detective, and how his neighbor happened to receive a commission. After that, he described the various strange encounters he had on the island, including a monkey guiding him and stumbling into a secret passage after a fall. Dazai Osamu. He silently listened, his internal intelligence on Komaeda Nagito's absurd luck constantly updating. After hearing the entire thrilling tale, which could have been turned into a novel, Dazai Osamu, with rare sincerity, remarked, "Why do I never get involved in such fun things? Port Mafia missions were truly boring." In fact, even someone like Odasaku, who worked at the lowest level of the Port Mafia, had a more interesting day-to-day job than him. Komaeda Nagito thought for a moment. Must be a luck issue. You know how it is. At that moment, someone knocked on the door, interrupting their conversation. It was the people delivering the sofa. The efficiency of the Port Mafia's logistics wasn't very high, and since the original sofa hadn't yet been cleaned, the logistics team had intended to wait until it dried before bringing it back. However, they had heard rumors that Nakahara Chuya had mentioned a guest visiting Dazai Osamu. The logistics team became anxious and decided to bring in a replacement sofa immediately, as they couldn't leave the office of an important figure like Dazai Osamu without a sofa when he had a guest. It would make them look stingy. The door wasn't locked, so after hearing Dazai Osamu's call to come in, the logistics team opened the door. And then, the four members of the logistics team were completely stunned. There really was a guest, still a youth, appearing younger than Dazai Osamu by a year or two, likely a high school student. This alone was shocking, because they knew Dazai Osamu didn't handle external affairs. It was rare for outsiders to visit his office. And they were certain this boy wasn't a member of the Port Mafia. As strange as that was, it wasn't even the most shocking part. What was truly bizarre was that this unknown boy was sitting directly on Dazai Osamu's desk, casually chatting with him. There was still a single-seater sofa nearby, so why was the guest sitting on the desk? The logistics team pretended not to notice anything unusual and calmly brought in the new sofa, preparing to remove the mismatched single-seater. Dazai Osamu didn't pay any attention to the people coming in and out. He acted as if they weren't there and resumed the conversation. Komaeda-kun, have you ever considered joining the Port Mafia? I think I'll be promoted to an executive soon, and when that happens, I'll definitely make you one of my direct subordinates. I feel like with you by my side, I'd never get bored. Logistics team. What? While it's true that executives can choose their subordinates, isn't this reason a little too casual? Komaeda Nagito smiled wryly. I'm honored that you'd consider me, but someone like me would only cause trouble for you, Dazai-kun. I'd just be a burden, so please allow me to decline. I don't mind trouble, Dazai Osamu replied. I really want to be Komaeda-kun's friend, but Komaeda-kun keeps pushing me away. He had already noticed this problem long ago. In fact, after overhearing the conversation between Kudo Senichi and Komaeda Nagito with the listening device he'd planted earlier, Dazai Osamu knew that Kudo Senichi wanted to become a famous detective. Despite knowing Komaeda Nagito for quite some time, Kudo Senichi hadn't even realized this and had foolishly tried to befriend Komaeda Nagito. Being rejected was almost inevitable. The logistics team, who were in the process of moving the sofas, were so shocked by this conversation that they nearly dropped the furniture. Is this really Dazai Osamu? Though Dazai Osamu was only 17, it was impossible to treat him like a typical teenager. Talking about making friends so innocently felt like something a fake Dazai Osamu would say. However, Komaeda Nagito, unfazed, smiled and said, I just feel that keeping a distance is good for everyone. Besides, Dazai-kun, you weren't really sincere when you said those things, right? Indeed, Dazai Osamu was only interested in Komaeda Nagito, but that was far from genuinely wanting to be friends. If he had been serious, he wouldn't have so casually brought Komaeda Nagito directly to the Port Mafia, nor would he have let the Port Mafia members see Komaeda Nagito in his office. The Port Mafia wasn't unbreakable like steel. If word got out that Komaeda Nagito was a friend of Dazai Osamu, it could put Komaeda, a civilian, in danger. People might use him as leverage, which could threaten his safety. For those Dazai Osamu truly considered friends, no one in the Port Mafia even knew about their relationship. Of course, part of this was because Dazai Osamu didn't often work at the Port Mafia headquarters, so he rarely encountered them. But even more so, it was because Dazai Osamu deliberately avoided interacting too much with them in such places. Komaeda Nagito didn't know how Dazai Osamu treated other friends, he only knew what real friends were like. Kudo Shinichi had just recently set a perfect example, so it wasn't something he'd forget so quickly. Although many people thought Komaeda Nagito was the type who couldn't read the room, in reality, when he wanted to, he was very sensitive to other people's attitudes. He just usually didn't care. But Dazai Osamu, with his constant double-faced behavior, often saying things that led people to misunderstand him, was someone even Komaeda Nagito couldn't ignore. Clearly, you don't mean it, yet you keep saying these things. Even I will start to get confused. Komaeda Nagito smiled and continued, Dazai-kun, you obviously have more important things to focus on, so don't waste your time on someone like me. The logistics team quietly left the room, closing the door behind them. How terrifying. Who exactly was that boy? How could he talk to Dazai-sama like that? And why did he say Dazai-sama wasn't serious about wanting to be friends with him? Isn't it obvious from Dazai-sama's attitude that he's being serious? Even though the sofa had arrived, neither of them changed positions, and they continued their conversation as they were. If you put it that way, I have a question for you, Dazai Osamu asked curiously. Have you ever had any friends? Even as a Port Mafia intelligence officer, it was impossible to find any information about Komaeda Nagito having significant relationships with friends from childhood to middle school. The best they could find was, had relatively good relationships with certain people. The person Komaeda Nagito had the best connection with, according to the records, was Kudo Shinichi. Dazai Osamu already knew that Komaeda Nagito had rejected being friends with him, which only made him more curious. Without hesitation, Komaeda Nagito replied, I used to. Not expecting such a straightforward answer, Dazai Osamu was momentarily surprised. Are you still in contact? He passed away in an unfortunate car accident, Komaeda Nagito said. I cancelled a family trip to attend his funeral. Later, I found out that the cruise we had planned to take sank, and many people died, so I remember it very clearly. From this description, Dazai Osamu finally matched Komaeda Nagito's friend to a particular child in the elementary school records. The problem was, this friend was likely only a friend in Komaeda Nagito's mind. That kid was extremely popular, everyone liked him and wanted to be his friend. The records showed that he treated Komaeda Nagito just like anyone else, with no special affection, hence why he wasn't listed as one of Komaeda Nagito's friends in the intelligence reports. He was my best friend. While Dazai Osamu was deep in thought, Komaeda Nagito, as if triggered by memories, spoke nostalgically. After losing that friend, I was really heartbroken. I wondered, why am I so unlucky? I finally had a friend, and then he died. But his death, as unfortunate as it was, ended up saving my entire family, so the loss didn't hit me as hard. Lies. Dazai Osamu thought to himself. Being so cautious about friendship, is it because of that event? Do you feel that one day a friend might disappear as part of the cost of your luck, so you've simply rejected intimate relationships from the start? Even saying these things now is likely your way of hinting to me to stop talking about becoming your friend, because it's a dangerous endeavor. However, not only did Dazai Osamu not plan to stop, but his interest had been further piqued with a touch of seriousness. As expected, I still want to be Komaeda-kun's friend. Dazai Osamu stood up, and now it was his turn to look down at Komai de Nagito. He smiled playfully, directly aiming to conquer his target. So, Komai de-kun, would you like to tell me how I can become your friend? Chapter 21 End.